Hi, everybody. My name is Chris Arledge. Welcome to this week's edition of WeAreSC.com's Inside the Trojan Huddle, where we tell it like it is. Inside the Trojans Huddle is a panel discussion put up each Tuesday featuring WeAreSC columnists, staff writers, and, well, these days, the three of us. We start off with a pregame show, introducing our panel members. First, a WeAreSC columnist who writes WeAreSC.com's The Monday Morass, Yay or Nay, and Sunday Takeaways. He does regular season football and basketball reports. He hosts his own podcast show entitled Locked on USC. He twice bested Chuck Norris in hand-to-hand combat. He is Mark Culkin. The editor-in-chief of WeAreSC.com, a columnist, a national recruiting guru, producer and moderator of in-season video shows 4 Downs and 5 Things. A graduate of USC, he wrote most of Madonna's hits. He is Eric McKinney. I'm your substitute host while Greg Katz is out. And for those who are wondering, and I know most of you are, we understand that Greg is recovering quite well. We do expect him back at some point soon, and we're hopeful that we do get him back soon. I played small college football. I write some stuff for WeAreSC. I practice law. I was Apollo Creed stunt double in Rocky II. I'm Chris Arledge. Folks, if you enjoy WeAreSC.com's Inside the Trojans Huddle, go click on the like and red subscriber buttons. I say this every week, so if you listen every week and you haven't done it yet, I'm probably not changing your mind this week. And if you're new to the show, you should probably watch it before you do that. Maybe you won't like it. So forget it. I take that back. Don't do it. We still have the special $1 for your first month for premium content on WeAreSC.com. This is the time to sign up because spring practice is just about to start. So we're going to have all kinds of good stuff. And when spring is over, it's going to be the second transfer portal window. So you're going to want to hear about that too. So sign up, and we'd love to have you. Okay. All right, fellas, you ready? First quarter. Eric McKinney, let's start with you. We're now a week away from spring football. What needs to happen for the Trojans during this spring football session? And what would you like to see if we were able to watch, which of course we're not? Go ahead.
So everyone's going to start defensively, and I'm going to start there too. And I don't want to rush them because D'Anton Lynn was very clear a few times when he has spoken to the media about how slow he's going to go with his install. He said at UCLA last year, he doesn't know if they got 50% of the way through putting stuff in the spring. And guys were kind of antsy, let's do more, but he's going to want to go extremely slow. So I don't want to sit here and say, oh, I want the defense flying around at 100% install in and all the scheme work done and all of that. But I want them to be at the end of spring extremely confident and competent at whatever is in, specifically in that back 5 with communication on movement and shifts and all of that stuff when they see that from the offense. Again, I don't expect them to have every single thing in and running kind of at all cylinders there, but what they do have in, the hope is that they're, again, confident and competent at whatever is in there, because that is something that whole back end struggled with a ton last year. And Matt Entz even talked about that, where if they saw shifts in movement and any of that stuff, that communication either didn't happen or happened too long to where guys weren't ready to go. That was an issue all year last year. So defensively, again, we can talk about tackling, we can talk about being physical, we can talk about all that stuff. That's kind of, for me, the key. Let's know what we're doing, especially in that back end. And that's probably going to be all new guys, all incoming transfers back there. So going to be interesting, I think, in that maybe at nickel, Jalen Smith's there, but a ton of experienced corners and safeties coming in this offseason. Offensively, I would love Miller Moss to sort of separate at quarterback. And I know there's going to be stuff, and maybe I'm setting this up, hopefully, for Mark to take offensive line, because that's going to be key too. But number one, you're replacing Caleb Williams, and Lincoln Riley not going out of his way, but certainly not standing up there going, "Hey, Miller's our guy. He's going to be the guy." He did praise him for what he did. The entire feeling is that Miller Moss is going to be that guy. Jaden Mayava is not some slouch with no experience who has never played quarterback before. Like, this guy can play football. If you line those two guys up, just their sort of Madden NCAA football stats on height, speed, arm strength, all of that, you'd probably play with Mayava based on what he's going to give you there physically. So I would love for Miller Moss to just take over this team, be that same quarterback that we saw leading up to the Holiday Bowl and in the Holiday Bowl, and to have no questions at that spot by the end of spring. But again, that's two kind of specific things on a team that needs all of it, needs everything done this spring. There's a ton of questions for this program.
All right, Mark Holkin, what say you?
Yeah, I agree with Eric that Coach Lynn said he had to install things slowly at UCLA, but with all due respect, Eric, he's talking to UCLA people, so he had to go a little bit slower than normal, probably. Now, to the point though, yes, you want to make sure these guys understand their new scheme that they're going to be learning. And simplification is really, I think, what it's all about. When you're saying we're going to slow things down, make sure they understand our base package. Eric talked about, all the pre-snap shifting and the communication process and how it just turned into some hieroglyphic Greek communication that was going on between the players. Everyone just looking around, and before you know it, everything's history because it's passed them by. So identify the guys who are going to be able to make an impact. On defense, you got to stop the run, you got to stop the pass. You look at USC's defensive rankings in 2023, they were just rank. They were 12th in the conference run defense, I think 117th nationally. You got to start there. Once you've identified who your players are, you can then start focusing on, getting real specific. But yeah, at the end of spring camp, what do you want from the defense? Have an understanding that, all right, I got some competency here now. And once we get through the summer and into fall camp, we'll be able to take what these guys learned slowly and take them and advance them through each week, preparing for their team that they're going to be playing. On offense, look, Miller Moss is QB1 right now. I don't think there's going to be any question. Do you want somebody who's got a prototypical NFL size like that Jaden brings to the roster? Sure. I prefer the results on the field. And even though Jaden has, more college starts than Miller Moss, what Miller Moss brings to the table, he can say, you know what? I can not start for 3 years, and you can throw me out there, and I'm going to give you an all-star performance because you're surrounding him with an all-star cast. And you have Lincoln Riley calling the plays on offense. That's not going to change. You have your quarterback. We're going to find out if the 2023 wide receiver recruiting class turns out to be one of the best in USC history. You've got 4 sophomores now returning, who Miller is pretty, I would say, familiar with, since they do a lot of second team practice reps last year. That moves up to first string reps this year. And then you got to check out your new running backs, freshmen. You got the guy coming in from Mississippi State, who's probably going to be at the head of the leaderboard when the depth chart is released. You need that experience. And then the offensive line that Eric alluded to. Look, this is what it is right now. You've got some really nice, talented first-line players. I would assume your first-string offensive line, Elijah Page, Emmanuel Prignon, Jonah Monheim at center, Olani Noah, right guard, Mason Murphy, right tackle. It's after that. That's where they're going to be trying to identify what are we doing this spring, and what do we need to find in that in that spring transfer portal window that opens up middle of April. So this spring camp, you've got a new defensive staff, you've got a bunch of new players. Eric kind of touched on it. We'll see if they, rise to the top and become starters, where they are on the depth chart. And then again, Lincoln Riley just needs to finish spring camp on the offensive side of the ball confident that he knows who his starting quarterback is and can get everything kind of that assembly line going once fall camp starts.
All right, thanks, Mark. I think at the end of spring camp, we're still going to have no idea what kind of defense we have, and that's true for a bunch of reasons. One is the slow install that Eric talked about, which is not a bad thing. This is a coaching staff and a defensive coordinator who want to make sure that their guys actually understand their assignments and care about the fundamentals. So that's going to pay dividends, but it may not pay dividends during the spring. The other reason is because in practice, defenses have an advantage. They know the offense. They know it extraordinarily well, and especially early in practice sessions, which spring football is. Usually, the offensive line takes some time to gel. Offensive lines come together slower than defensive lines do. So I don't know that we're going to know a ton about the defense at the end of spring. It's hard to judge. It's hard to judge entire units. What you can do is judge individual players, and I think there are a couple of spots I'm interested in. I also suspect that Miller Moss will be the starter. I'm less certain of that than everybody else. Look, Jaden Mayava started 14 games last year. He's thrown 4 times the number of passes in games that Miller Moss has. And he played well as a freshman, and guys usually make a big jump between their freshman and sophomore years, especially if you're moving into a Lincoln Riley offense. So I think it'll be interesting actually to see what happens there. I would prefer not to see huge separation at quarterback because I think there's a decent chance that USC is going to need both guys. And so what I'd like to see is Mayava play really well and make it tough. I don't think Mayava is going to be announced as a starter at the end of spring. In fact, I would be stunned if that were to happen. But if it's competitive, that's a good sign because I do think Miller Moss will be a good quarterback. And I would like for USC to have another really good quarterback on the roster, especially a guy that has some years ahead of him. The other spot that I'm interested in is right tackle. I don't know if USC has a right tackle yet. I do think on the inside, especially with Monheim coming back and probably playing center, I think USC is going to be pretty good in the middle. And it's going to have some backups in addition to the guys that Mark mentioned. I think Quinones probably comes back and can contribute at all 3 spots. I think Micah Banuelos is probably going to be in a position where he can offer quality depth. And I'm assuming that Elijah Page is going to be ready at left tackle. I think that's the consensus that he will be. Mason Murphy's a talented guy who hasn't yet put it together. I don't know if he's a right tackle. And I suspect the coaches don't know that either. And so we're going to see in the spring whether or not he can handle some guys off the edge that are pretty good. Because that's the thing. He will be tested in this spring. USC has some edge rushers that can play. And so if you're dealing with experienced guys like Muhammad, ultra talented guys like Braylon Shelby, you're going to be tested a little bit, and we'll see. And we'll see whether USC jumps into the post-spring transfer portal to grab a right tackle as a result. So I think that's going to be very interesting. All right, anything on any of that before we move on? Any other thoughts?
Yeah, and Eric, maybe you'll disagree with me, but and we're going to have
obviously, yes.
He should.
I'm going to get that in before you even go.
Yeah.
We're going to have you've been doing it, and I'm going to be helping out a little bit doing position group breakdowns. The offensive line, I've actually seen what could be a projected depth chart from inside USC. Behind Elijah Page, you know who the backup left tackle is right now? Again, it's probably written in etch and sketch, but it's incoming freshman Justin Taunu. So yeah, they're going to be hitting the transfer portal for some veteran depth at that tackle position, because behind Mason Murphy, again, you're getting younger. You need to have, I think you need that veteran presence, someone that, hey, if things go a little screwy here, we've got somebody who's been here before that maybe we can just plug and play in without having to teach a bunch of fundamentals and that kind of stuff. Absolutely.
Yeah, having an undersized and completely inexperienced left tackle is probably not what the coaching staff wants.
It also is why getting Jonah Monahan back for another year is big, right? I mean, you weigh that. Are you better off moving him to left tackle and going with your number two center if that's Gino, and he gives you kind of some ability to go. But my thought is this center position is so important to this offense, and that's potentially why Jonah comes in and plays center for you. But yeah, we've thought for a while, right? Another tackle, another edge guy, and those are the guys that they've kind of contacted when they've done some recruiting in the portal this offseason. I think another tackle, left or right, maybe a guy that can go both sides. That's going to be a key, I think, in this next window.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and if you're an experienced tackle playing maybe at a smaller level, but who's been very good at that level, it's probably a pretty appealing place to jump in right now because you probably think you're going to be able to take one of those two tackle spots, and you're going to do it on a high profile team where you're going to get a whole lot of tape against you going up with elite guys with this schedule. So yeah, it would. I don't think it'd surprise any of us if they pulled an offensive tackle out of the portal. All right, let's move on to the second quarter and let's talk about the college football playoffs rapid evolution. It was just a few months ago that they said we're going to go with 12 teams and that's going to start. And now already they're trying to expand to 14. I don't know if that's going to happen, but possibly after the 2026 season they go to 14. Now, what was interesting is in the press about this, it comes out that the Big Ten and the SEC had tried to push their weight around and say that the two buys. So if you have a 14 team playoff, it's going to be like the NFL playoffs, right? Where you're going to have two teams with buys, and that gives you two extra playoff games, which is more money for everybody. But the Big Ten and the SEC said we think those buys should go to our conference winners. And that was not well received by everybody, including Sonny Dykes, who had some words about it in the article. All right, so let's start with that. Mark Holkin, what do we think about this quick move, possibly, to a 14-team playoff? And what do we think about the Big Ten and the SEC saying, by the way, about those two buys, those belong to us?
I'm still waiting for the first horse to get to the table so I can taste it. What a 12-team playoff system is going to look like, taste like. I want to have that visceral reaction to go, yeah, that was pretty good. Bring on more. So at this point, I would like to say, slow down. Let's take Danton Lynn's approach to things. Let's have a 12-team system for a couple of years. Let them figure out the whole AFC versus NFC thing that they're trying to eventually get to. We've talked about it on the show. I agree with you, Chris. Eventually, it's going to get to a 14-team NFL-style playoff system. So before that, though, again, let's see how the 12-team system works. Let's figure out what works, what doesn't, before we, take that next leap for mankind. Slow down. Yeah. In the end, I agree with you. It's going to look like the NFL, 14 teams. You're going to have a couple of buys. And yeah, you know what? You know why the SEC and the Big Ten Conference feel this way? Why they should have, I guess, more than everybody else? Because they're kind of taking everybody along with them, saying, look, you're going to be a member of this conference. The ACC, the Big 12, whatever remains of you guys, you're going to be splitting up and coming into these conferences. So you might as well just get on board now. Don't buck the system. And maybe you'll be one of those teams that get a bye in the future. I'm fine with it. It's all about money. It's all about power structure.
What do you think, McKinney?
They're going the wrong way. So I think 8's good. I think 6 is probably perfect for a playoff to go from 12 to 14 and then to 16 and 20 or wherever they see this going is the wrong way. I don't mind the Big Ten and the SEC kind of testing the water a little bit about how much power do we have already and what's our sort of 10-year plan for getting to that point, maybe. I think eventually like Mark said, that's going to happen anyway because those are going to be the only two conferences sending teams to the playoff when things eventually unroll into that, or unroll into that and then unwind back into what we have now, where you've got three Big Ten conferences or divisions within the conference, and we're back to having the Pac-10. Again, that's kind of all in the future. I think it's crazy to lock yourself into having that. And we're talking about right now in, let's say, 2026, to say ahead of time the Big Ten champion and the SEC champion get first round buys, to me is wild. They might not be the best teams. You may have an ACC team that's the best team that year and is deserving of a bye. You're going to get it was the same thing when the Big Ten and SEC said we should get three teams each into the 12-team playoff. Some years they're going to deserve it. Absolutely. Some years they're going to deserve four teams. Some years they're going to deserve two. Some years you're going to have the third place team in the Big Ten who did not reach the Big Ten conference championship. They're going to have gotten there with their best win, right? They'll have missed all the big time teams because there's so many teams that you miss in conference now. They're going to have their best win over an 8-5 Nebraska team. And they're going to say, we're the number 3 team in the Big Ten and we need to go to the playoff. And it's like, no, that doesn't get you in there. So again, locking in a number before the season starts, I think is in a sport that has become unfair with haves and have-nots. And I don't mean has become, it always has been, but now we're kind of shining spotlights on it. That's crazy to me to just set that up ahead of time, even though, yeah, maybe 19 out of 20 years that's deserving, but let's figure that out at the end with whatever process you have in place to pick these teams.
Yeah, I fundamentally agree with Eric that we're moving the wrong direction. Although it depends what the playoff is about, right? If the playoff is about finding the best team that year to crown the national champion, you don't need teams 13 and 14 in it. Look, in the NFL, the teams that are 13th or 14th, the guys that barely slide into to one of the last wild card spots, will sometimes make it to a Super Bowl and sometimes win it. But there's a lot more parity in the NFL than there is in college football. There's usually a tremendous separation between the top 3, 4, 5 teams and the teams right below them. And if you look at the other divisions, if you look at the history of what we used to call 1AA, now it's FCS. If you look at the history there, they're 13, 14 teams. They're not winning it. They're not. It's always the same few teams every single year. So I don't think it makes any sense if what you're trying to figure out is who the best team is. Now, if you're trying to add some games that will be fun to watch and will generate a lot of money and will give you even more television revenue, then I suppose it makes perfect sense to move to a 14 playoff. I would rather see an 18 playoff, and I'd rather see no buys. I don't think there's any justification for giving the top 2 teams a bye. The separation between team number 2 and team number 3 is usually not that big, unless you have 2 conferences. If you have 2 conferences and the two conference winners get a bye, that makes sense to me. But at the same time, I think if you have 2 conferences, that's not the way it's going to play out. It's the winner of one conference is going to be like the AFC championship game now. It's going to be the game right before the championship game, I suspect. So anyway, I don't know the 13 and 14 really need to be in it. I'll watch the games. Everybody will. So it's not a problem. We'll generate more money. The interesting thing is the brazenness of the Big Ten and the SEC making this demand. And they didn't make it publicly, but they must have known it was going to get out. Do the 2 conferences have a point? They do, in the sense that they are dramatically different from the other conferences right now. Even the ACC, which still has three powerhouses in it, is a conference that is completely falling apart, and at least one of the teams has been very open about the fact that they intend to get out. I suppose the Big Ten and the SEC may be looking to force that issue a little bit, right? I mean, if you're Florida State you're already frustrated you're not making enough money. You already want out. And now the two conferences that you would want to be in come out and say, yeah, I think our winner should get a bye because none of you guys even matter. I think Florida State probably is even more anxious to jump. I do think eventually you're going to have two conferences. I think we know what the two conferences are. And with all due respect to Sonny Dykes, there isn't a single blue blood in the Big 12 these days. Not one. Not one. It doesn't mean that they don't have some good football teams from time to time. It doesn't mean those teams can't win a playoff game or even maybe conceivably a national championship at some point. But don't kid yourself. The SEC and the Big Ten can't be excluded from a college football playoff because it would be seen as completely illegitimate. But if you cut the Big 12 out, I'm not sure that's true. People would say, well, it's not fair. There are some teams there that need to be in it. But nobody would really say, well, you have to have the Big 12 because you have to have who? Utah? Colorado? Baylor? TCU? I don't think so. When college football fans talk about the top programs, those names don't come up, even though they have good teams. Sometimes they have really good coaches at some of those programs. So, things are moving quickly. I think we know the direction they're moving, and it's probably a direction that the other conferences don't like very much. But I think there's nothing they can do about it at this point. Any more thoughts on that before we move on? Anybody want to defend Sonny Dykes and defend TCU's place in the college football hierarchy?
I mean, in the Big 12, you're looking at Utah being like thought of as maybe the conference champ this year, Colorado, like the two big the two Pac-12 teams going over. Then it's like what, Kansas and Oklahoma State are like the holdovers that are, thought to be the best programs in that conference right now. No, I mean, the Big 12 getting an automatic top 4 seed even this year feels like a stretch right now.
I mean, there's probably a separation between the Big 12 and the other conferences, whether it's the Mountain West or there's separation. But there's also a clear separation between the Big 12 and even the other three. I mean, the ACC is on life support, but the ACC has Florida State, Clemson, and Miami. All three of those programs would instantly be the face of the Big 12 if they were there, right? They just would. So I don't know. I mean, things are changing rapidly. The good news is we're going to have a lot of really great games. Whether it's a 12 team or a 14 team, we're going to have a bunch of great games. It's going to be fun to watch. Once again, college football showing its amateurism by making decisions that are designed only to generate huge amounts of money, which nobody wants to share with the players. All right, halftime. The halftime topic is most underrated. USC football's most underrated. And I don't care what you want to talk about. It could be a play or a game, a moment, whatever you want. But when you hear USC football's most underrated, what do you think? Let's start with Eric McKinney.
This might be controversial because I don't know how underrated he is, but for the amount of attention he gets compared to where I think he should be in the discussion, Charles White, for me, should be up there as one of the, I don't know, 3 or 4 like best USC football players of all time. The gap between his rushing yards, right, 6,200 about, to Marcus Allen at 4,800. That gap is huge. That gap is absolutely huge. And he gets sort of buried a little bit. Yeah, he's listed in the RBU and the Heismans and that stuff. I don't think he gets enough singular focus in terms of what he did at USC and even a little bit in the NFL too. Just the accolades, the constant production, and everything he did at USC. Again, it's not as if he's never talked about, but I think for what he accomplished, it's not enough attention that he gets.
Eric, how many games a year did they play when Charles White was running back?
11 regular season, and those are the only stats that counted for the totals. I think that's a good look. If you look at all of USC's Heisman winners, maybe Mike Garrett is talked about a little bit less, but everybody else has talked about more than Charles White. And you're right. He was the man. That's a good pick. I like that one. Mark Holkin, what do you got? You have something as good?
No, probably
Okay.
not. But
Okay. Well, then let's skip you.
I'm
Go
gonna
ahead.
go a little bit more of the emotional, underrated, I think. And special teams at USC is constantly overlooked, probably for good reason. But they have had a couple of special moments. Number one, you had Jake Olson coming out doing the blind snap, and even though that was prearranged, the fact that that happened national TV, that was a pretty special moment to be the first blind young man to come in and actually perform in a game, and dude nailed it. And then before that, I don't know, this is a little personal, but the whole Mario Danilo thing, that the tribute the next year after his passing, there was a lot of onions in that stadium at that moment. And I had a bag full right in front of me. So for me, those were two underrated moments in USC history.
Okay, I like that. I'm also gonna go with a player. And if you talk about the best wide receivers in USC history, USC's had so many, especially over the last 25 years or so. But even before that, that you could have somebody named 6, 8, 10 guys, and this name may not get mentioned, and it's probably a crime. I'm going with Johnny Morton. Johnny Morton is still second on the single season receiving yards list at USC. He had over 1,500 yards and 14 touchdowns in 1993. And he obviously had a good quarterback throwing to him, but 1993, you didn't throw the ball as much in 1993 as you do in 2010, 2015, 2020. That is a gigantic number. He's still fourth in the single season touchdown receiving list with his 14. He goes to the Lions as a first round pick, has 4 1,000-yard seasons, and he's still third all time in the Detroit Lions franchise history in receptions and receiving yards. That's a heck of a career. But if you ask USC fans, even ones who've been watching for the last 40 years like I have, to name the best wide receivers, if you go back to the 90s, you're going to hear names like Keyshawn. You're going to hear Lynn Swann earlier than that. You're going to hear a bunch of guys from the Pete Carroll era and since. And people don't mention Johnny Morton. And Johnny Morton was an absolute stud, who also, in addition to those numbers, had some really great moments, including his freshman year, where he makes that catch with 16 seconds left in that 45-42 shootout against UCLA. I mean, that is quite a welcome to the stage as a freshman to make that catch in that moment. So Johnny Morton is my guy. He was a big time stud at USC and in the NFL.
Good call.
Oh, by the way, one other one: 1996 USC Notre Dame, the streak breaking game. I don't care. I don't care what else I see. That will always be in my top 2 or 3 USC games. It wasn't a well-played game. It was a lousy USC team. I don't care. Breaking that streak, which if you lived through that streak as a USC fan, I mean, there was almost nothing worse than that. It was so awful, and just consistently losing on the biggest stage you have every single year to the team and the coach you hate the most. And the jokes that came out of it, it was just so oppressive that lifting that yoke off the shoulders was an unbelievable moment, and one of the most excited I've ever seen a Coliseum crowd.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because every time we talk about kind of underrated moments or moments you remember or whatever, and we don't mention it, I get a text from my buddy every single time. Mark Cusano batted pass. Mark Cusano
Yep.
batted pass
Yep.
every single time. So I am glad we brought that up in this one.
I honestly think it's my second favorite USC game of all time, behind Bush Push. I mean, the Oklahoma Orange Bowl was amazing. There have been a lot of amazing games in the last 40 years, but I'm just telling you, if you started watching USC football when I did, all you saw for 13 years, well, we had one tie, but all you saw for 13 years was just humiliation at the hands of the Irish, and that leprechaun dancing around and the leprechaun mascot dancing around. The first one was Lou Holtz. I mean, it was just so difficult to handle, so awful that when when USC finally won that overtime game, it was like you could feel the Coliseum. It was like people, this was the happiest moment in our lives. It was an amazing moment.
Yeah. I still remember my feeling when that happened. When I saw Mark Cusano leap up, knock that ball down, and then both hands go up in the air like this. Yeah, I was on both knees and I was just looking up, and I lost it.
Yeah, and the crowd was unbelievable that night. Not early in the game, because early in the game USC was just doing what they usually do. They were screwing around. They were settling for 3 when they needed 7. But in that fourth quarter, when from the point where the Notre Dame kicker missed that extra point and kept it as an 8-point lead, everybody said, "Well, wait a minute," because we thought we were done. We thought it was over, and it's just a fantastic night.
13 years of not beating Notre Dame came to an end.
Yeah, that was beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you again, Mark Cusano. And Cusano did it again the next year in South Bend. Also had heroic moments there to finally break the losing streak in South Bend. Just anyway, great game.
We still own a drink and dinner. So if you're watching the show, Mark, come to a meet and greet and we'll treat you.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, good. Third quarter, the NCAA once again doing NCAA things. So this past week, it comes out that the NCAA has rejected Reggie Bush's appeal. Reggie Bush was appealing the NCAA ruling in the whole affair Bush because he wants to get his Heisman Trophy back. The Heisman Trust has said, not up to us, it's the NCAA. Once the NCAA changes their ruling, if they do, then we'll change our position. So Reggie goes to the NCAA. The NCAA says no, and they say no on the basis of standing. Reggie does not have standing to challenge it because it was an institutional penalty, not an individual penalty. Okay, Mark Holken, I know you're a big believer in those fair-minded folks at the NCAA, so why don't you go ahead and let us know, how do you feel about that NCAA ruling last week, Mark?
Can I light the match, start the cremation, Chris? That's all I want. I want the power to light the match.
That'd be fantastic, wouldn't it?
That would be outstanding. Look, we've all seen the Spider-Man meme. Everyone's pointing at each other now. It's you. That's what's going on right here. You've got the Heisman Trust saying, well, we can't give it back to Reggie because the NCAA won't reinstate his stats. And Reggie Bush doesn't want to do anything until the NCAA reinstates their stats. I'm at the point in my life now where this is bigger than Reggie Bush. This is all about principle. And for the NCAA to have the freaking audacity to tell Reggie, you're just a kind of an innocent bystander in this. You don't have any say in this. This is a family show. I can't use the language I want to use right now. But if I'm USC, I'm saying, you know what? Screw this. Screw Reggie, with all due respect. But we are going to start recognizing that 8th Heisman. We're going to put that jersey back up in the peristyle. We're going to find some sculptor to give us a replica Heisman Award, and we're going to put it back in Heritage Hall. We're going to give everybody the finger. 2 of these. At this point, I don't get it. The whole rationale why we won't and why they won't and why we can't. Just somebody take responsibility, do the right thing, and take the matches away from me. Because this is ridiculous at this point. And I'll be honest, Reggie Bush saying, well, I'm going to stand by. I don't want anything to happen until they clear my name. Stop it. Stop hoisting yourself up by that petard. It doesn't work right now. Just say, I want my stuff. USC, do what you need to do.
All right, Eric McKinney, should Mark Holken stop playing with matches?
I mean, probably, right? Yeah. So this, I mean, it absolutely tracks. There's no surprise in this. The NCAA is just going to keep this at arm's length for as long as they need to, and they don't really ever need to go back and look at this. They can just make a unilateral decision on it. None of that means that it's right. It just means that's the easiest thing for them to do right now when they've got a million other fires that are burning everywhere, probably because of Mark, that they have to deal with right now. My thought is that at this point, when the NCAA does fold and whatever sort of Phoenix rises from the ashes. You appeal to that body. They're going to understand what college football is and has always been. They'll reinstate whatever the stats are. What I'm looking forward to is them also reinstating all the eligibility that the NCAA took away from a bunch of players, forming some like over 40 league for all these guys that had years taken away over the last 20 or 30 years, and seeing that play out. I don't think USC needs to do anything to go over Reggie Bush. Like Reggie Bush, for me, owns the number 5 at USC. Like that became bigger. That became bigger than USC. There are players still playing wearing number 5 specifically because of Reggie Bush. And that always struck me as funny, where USC wouldn't give out the number 5 and couldn't talk about the number 5. But you've got guys at TCU and at Syracuse and whatever wearing number 5 specifically because of Reggie Bush, and the NCAA never said, no, that number doesn't exist. You can't do that. So I think eventually this thing will get figured out when the NCAA doesn't have the power anymore to say any of this, and some governing body does reinstate that. I think it'll take a little while, and I think that's just what it's going to be. I don't think it would be wrong for USC to just say, no, we're putting that up. I also don't think that you do that if it's against Reggie Bush's wishes. I feel like he earned that number. He earned that trophy, and it's okay for him to have a say in how it gets represented at USC.
Yeah. If you've watched this or read anything I ever write, you know what I think about the NCAA. And I'm actually going to write an article on this. I haven't written an article in some time because it's the off season and I'm busy and I'm lazy. But I'm going to on this because I want to beat up the NCAA a little bit. So I'm not going to spend a bunch of time talking about them, other than to say that their position is ridiculous and they try to wrap it up in the language of the law, but that's not what's happening. There are a couple other things I do want to talk about related to this, though. One is, I don't know Reggie, and I doubt seriously that Reggie watches this program. If I had a chance to talk to him, though, I would tell him there's a better way to do this, and I would like to help you. The problem I have is that Reggie is running around and he is overstating his position in a way that I think makes it easy for people just to leave him alone. He's saying things like, no evidence that anything, that there's no evidence that I ever did anything wrong. There's no evidence of it. Stop. Yes, there is evidence that that your family was receiving money, which was clearly an NCAA violation. There is evidence of that. That's not the issue. The issue with USC was that there was no evidence that USC's coaching staff knew about this, and the NCAA doctored the evidence in order to make it appear as if they did, and didn't allow cross-examination of a known felon who had an interest in this thing, right? It was Soviet Union kangaroo court level nonsense the NCAA did. But there's no question that Reggie's family got money, and there's no question that would have made him ineligible at the time. Stop saying that, Reggie. Your better position would be to talk to the other Heisman winners and have them put pressure on the Heisman Trust. The Heisman Trust doesn't have to do what the NCAA tells them to do, especially when they know that the NCAA is at this point a rotting corpse that has no power and nobody cares about them, right? And, Johnny Manziel has come out and said how ridiculous it is. He said that he talks to other Heisman winners about it. What Reggie should be doing is talking to those Heisman winners, not overstating his case, not saying that nothing wrong was done by him or his family. That's stupid. What you're better off saying is, guys, behind closed doors, guys, you know that almost everybody in this room got some amount of improper benefits, and you know that the rules were ridiculous because it was trying to make sure that all the adults got to keep all the money. Here's the thing. Can you collectively sign this letter to the Heisman Trust demanding they give me my trophy back? That's all I'm asking you to do. If some of you want to speak out, that's great. But if you can sign this letter, if I can promote this letter publicly and put a little bit of pressure on them, maybe I can get things to happen. And he might want to start with some of the USC Heisman winners that have a ton of clout, right? I mean, a guy like Marcus Allen has a ton of clout in the football world, but USC has 7 other Heisman winners. So there are better ways to go about this campaign. I think ultimately Reggie will win the campaign. I think he should, because it doesn't make any sense. And as for the NCAA, I'm going to put what I think about their latest decision in an article. So pay your $1 if you're not a premium member, and you can go read it tomorrow or the next day. Whenever I finish it, McKinney puts it up. But it's nonsense, and it's typical of the NCAA to do this. The NCAA has long been an organization that is corrupt and stupid, and its sole purpose is to make sure that the players don't benefit from their work and their effort. And they've shown that they're going to go out the same way they've always lived, which is in a manner that just lets everybody know that this is an organization that never should have been entrusted with any power from anybody at any time. It's a ridiculous organization. All right, any thoughts on Reggie, the NCAA, before we move on?
No, I think you're right. I said that a while ago that the real, not villains, but villain for this story are the former Heisman winners that haven't come out and said, hey, we all did this. We all did it. Like, take every one of them away or give them to the guys that won them. And for Johnny Manziel to be like the hero of the story, to me, is like full crazy redemption arc. But if he can get this kind of kickstarted and going, I also think that that's the way to do it. Like, take all of them away or give them to everyone who won them.
Look, there are a lot of Heisman winners that know that they received money, right? Why these guys should just come out and be honest about it. This is what I always thought about steroids in baseball, right? All these guys pretending like it wasn't them. It was Bonds and Clemens when, and Bonds and Clemens probably also should have just said, of course I took steroids. Do you know that everybody was taking it? Everybody was. Look, a Heisman winner, look, maybe not Roger Staubach. He played at the Naval Academy. Maybe he didn't get any special benefits, but it's got to be 95% of these guys got something. Well, they just come out and say, we all got stuff. This is ridiculous. Give the guy his trophy. And I don't know why they're not willing to say that. They should. It's the honest thing to do, and they know it. But whatever. That's the NCAA. They're going to screw up one more thing before they die. Okay, fourth quarter. Another edition of Arledge's Questions. Once again, I'm going to be unfair. The points will be completely arbitrary based on solely what I like or what I want to see the outcome of the game be. The winner, as always, will receive a week's worth of pride and honor. The loser will receive nothing and will remain in dishonor. We got 10 questions. Are you ready, guys? Number one. Mark Holken, you start. Tell me the USC football game that you wished would never end.
Oh, wow. It's that game that happened in the Rose Bowl against a team from the state of Texas that if it didn't end, USC doesn't lose. So that's probably going to segue into one of your other questions as well for me. But yeah, it's that one. It's got to be that.
You want us to still be playing for that three-peat. All right. Good answer. Eric McKinney?
Yeah, that's the one I wrote down first, because if it doesn't end, you can't lose. The other one I'll say, because I knew that if I went second, I was probably going to have to pick a different one. USC UCLA 2011. There's no reason to stop at 50-0, right? You get to 100-0, I think, pretty easily. Maybe only 2 more quarters to get there.
Yeah. Okay. I like both of those answers. I'm going to throw another one in. I'm going to throw in the UCLA game 10 years earlier, the 2001 game, the 27-0 game against the Bruins. I just remember sitting in that stadium. By the way, it was a revelation because up to that point, UCLA was still seen as a better program. And as one LA Times columnist wanted to tell us at just the right time. But I remember sitting there enjoying just how badly USC's defensive front was dominating UCLA. I mean, UCLA was held to 114 yards of total offense, 5 sacks of Corey Boss, 3 picks. And I remember it seemed like every time he dropped back, he was getting hit by Mike Patterson or Sean Cody or Kenichi Udeze. He was just getting beat up. And I remember every time USC would get the ball, I would yell, just punt it. I don't even want to see our offense do anything. I just want to watch that defense just embarrass the Bruins. That was a fun night, and I did not want it to end. All right, you guys both had the same answer, so you both get the same number of points, 0. Number 2. One of the viewer comments this past week, and I do sometimes read the viewer comments. Sometimes you ask good questions in there, but sometimes you make comments like that. Here's the comment, right? Bring back Greg. Chris is too mean. Now, the first part of that, we all agree we want Greg to come back. He's our friend. He does a great job on the show and writing for the. But the second part of that, Chris is too mean. I want you to respond to that, and I want you to tell me where you think that comment ranks in terms of the worst things ever said on the internet. Eric McKinney.
All right, it's not number 1. I don't know what number 1 is, but there's got to be something worse than that. I'll slot it in at number 3. I think at number 2, there's got to be something on our board from that USC Alabama 2017 game. There's got to be something in there that's number 2. Again, I don't know what it is, but Chris is too mean. I think is number 3 pretty safely.
Well, it's just at first when I read it, I thought maybe it was a joke, maybe it was fantasy, right?
It doesn't seem like it.
It seems like they're serious, but that's crazy. Mark Holkin, where do you think this ranks in terms of worst comments ever?
Probably right behind the person who said UCLA is a football blue blood.
Westward Ho, right behind the Westward Ho article?
Right behind, yeah, exactly. Right there.
All right, solid answers. You both get a point. It's 1-1 after 2 questions.
All right.
That takes us to question number 3. Give me the best and worst Heisman Trophy winners of all time. Mark Holkin.
Well, you made a really good case for Charles White. So I think we've got to, we might want to put Charles up there in that best ever.
Okay.
I don't know, if you're a known counterfeiter and you're spreading counterfeit money around, should you even be considered for a Heisman Trophy? Shouldn't that be yanked away from you? I think LSU's Heisman winner, the one before Joe Burrow, yeah, he might be the worst ever.
Because he's a criminal? All right.
Yeah.
Eric McKinney, do you have a best and worst Heisman Trophy winner of all time?
Yeah, and the best is somehow not a USC player. Barry Sanders in '88, and that's both for that season that he had, which he did not get bowl game stats accumulated there. He had like 220 yards in the bowl game that he missed out on. And then obviously the NFL career, if we're talking about that. The worst is still Archie Griffin wasn't the worst Heisman winner, but Archie Griffin over Ricky Bell that year is the worst Heisman decision. I mean, you've got like Gary Beeman in there, and there's some guys that won the award that those weren't the best players, but I think Archie Griffin over Ricky Bell for that second one is the worst decision.
Do we blame Chuck Muncie for that, though?
Blame whoever you want.
I don't know why you're picking on Chuck, but look, I agree with
that
Eric.
year they split the votes.
You know, I agree with Eric. Barry Sanders is the best Heisman Trophy winner of all time, and frankly, I don't think it's close. I think the gap between him and everybody else is enormous. And he makes a strong argument for the worst ever. Look, Gary Beeman, Gino Torretta, there are a series of guys that you look at and say, there's no way that guy was the best. Jason White winning it over Larry Fitzgerald, also pretty bad. I mean, that's a gruesome decision. But because you said Barry Sanders, which is the only right answer, you get the point. So Eric McKinney is up 2-1. Question number 4, a very solid football question. Steven Seagal's Hard to Kill or Jean-Claude Van Damme's Bloodsport? Mark Holkin.
Yeah, I'm going with Steven Seagal.
Okay. Any particular reason?
I'm just not a big Jean-Claude Van Damme fan, and I like Steven Seagal's attitude, the arrogance that he just rolls through his movies with.
Okay. All right. Eric McKinney.
I think the attitude and arrogance is just confusion for most of it. So it's Bloodsport and it's not close, and I don't think I need to defend that.
So So here's the thing. Bloodsport is an absolutely ridiculous movie, and it's fantastic. This is Jean-Claude Van Damme fighting blind against a guy who kills his opponents for no apparent reason. He doesn't even benefit him. That's pretty amazing. He's being chased by the feds. I don't even remember why. It's ridiculous. It's great. But don't sleep on Steven Seagal's early movies. Hard to Kill, Above the Law, incredible. When I saw Hard to Kill first. I saw it in the theaters. I think I was in high school at the time. I went to the movie. I didn't expect anything, and I was blown away the way he's breaking arms and stuff. I mean, it was fantastic. I'm going Hard to Kill on this one, and I do think you have to justify Bloodsport, McKinney. I don't think it's that obvious, and because you said that,
Did you
Mark
you
Hogan
didn't
gets
listen
one.
to what you just said about it?
Oh, that's amazing. It's amazing. But here's the thing. What was different is that Steven Seagal's fighting in his film was different from what we had seen from films before that. It was all the same kickboxing, karate, jump up and roundhouse kick sort of thing that Jean-Claude Van Damme was still doing, although he was doing the splits more than a lot of other people had done. But Steven Seagal's was, at that time, a creative form of fighting that involved a lot of broken arms and stuff. And I liked that. And I think that
Slow motion.
yeah, no, I mean, look, they're both great. They're both great films. And neither one has done anything over the last 30 years that would lead you to think that we should be talking about them today. But still, it's Seagal, and it's 2-2. All right, question number 5. Describe your own personal college football hell. Eric McKinney, go.
I don't know what the whole landscape looks like. It definitely has Oregon hosting, not hosting, but getting a bye in the college football playoff. UCLA is prominently involved. Maybe they end up with like a 12 seed, win the opening game and make a run, and then those two teams are in the championship game this year. I think an Oregon UCLA championship game with USC. Again, see, this is the thing. You make me talk about this stuff, and I'm going to say USC ends up with 8 losses in all of this, and then now I'm losing points because I'm being negative and this and that, right? No,
So you're saying the rules are unfair, and that
I'm not saying the
judge.
rule is unfair. I'm just trying to explain to
making a note.
everyone else. Look, you can rule how you want to rule. I don't want you to splice my answer and use that on all your social media stuff and say, look at what Eric was talking about today. So I'd like to just keep talking over this so that we can't find a good cut point and everyone understands everything that went into this answer.
You know darn well I don't know how to splice video. Mark Culkin, what do you have?
There's multiple answers to this question.
Not here. There's one.
Well, Dante's Inferno had multiple levels, so I'm going to go as deep as I can here.
All right.
How about USC going 0-12 and Notre Dame and UCLA playing for the College National Football Championship?
It's pretty grim.
Yeah.
That's pretty grim. Okay, I'm going to throw something out here. I have an undefeated USC playing UCLA and then Notre Dame. Notre Dame's also undefeated. I have USC losing 7 of their key starters in that UCLA game and being upset, and then having to face a number 1 undefeated Notre Dame team the following week after that upset without all their best players. And right before the game, USC's head coach leaves for the NFL, and he is immediately replaced by Clay Helton. I don't think it could get any worse than that. I'm going to give myself a point. It's 2-2-1, and we're moving on to number 6. Greatest cameo by a major star in a movie. Eric McKinney.
Bill Murray in Zombieland.
A fantastic choice. If you haven't seen Zombieland, you should. And Bill Murray is almost always the right answer for almost every question about movies. Mark Culkin, what do you got?
You know what? I'm just going to give up the point because I haven't been to a movie in so long and I can't think of one off the top of my head. So I'm going to cheat and say the best cameo in a TV show was Bob Newhart reappearing in his dream in the Bob Newhart show. they did a flashback. I don't know if you ever watched it.
No, that's a terrible answer. Just stop.
Oh,
Okay.
come on. Did you ever watch the New York show when he was in
It's
Vermont?
a terrible answer. It's not even a movie. All
I
right.
already said I was giving up a point anyway, so go ahead.
He is going to pick up a point. The Bill Murray answer is fantastic. Actually, Bill Murray had a couple of great cameos because Bill Murray as the dental patient in Little Shop of Horrors was also amazing. And I also would have accepted Tom Cruise as the Hollywood executive at Tropic Thunder, which was amazing. Eric McKinney gets a point. It's 3-2. Question number 7. McKinney or Culkin, we'll start with you. Is the heart of rock and roll really in Cleveland?
Well, that's where the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is.
I know.
So
And
no.
that's what Huey Lewis told us. Huey Lewis told us that the heart of rock and roll is in Cleveland. You say no. Eric McKinney, is the heart of rock and roll in Cleveland?
Wait, Mark, are you still going? It feels like you answered that for me.
For all the great songs that Huey Lewis has written, and there was quite a few, I was shocked when I went through the list and went, whoa, Huey Lewis did this, this, and this. For him to make that kind of statement, we're going to allow him a little bit of latitude, but it's not.
Okay. All right, McKinney, is the heart of rock and roll in Cleveland?
So I don't mind it being referred to as that, but it probably should be south of Cleveland a little bit. Like Cleveland became the heart of rock and roll because that's the first radio station that played all this stuff nationally. They're playing stuff from people born in Mississippi, New Orleans, Georgia, St. Louis. So the heart of rock and roll in terms of producing the music is down there. The idea to put it all together, the phrase rock and roll attached to that stuff, that's fine if it's in Cleveland. It's a little bit like calling Oregon the heart of college football when you put a bunch of money into it, send it out nationally, and brand it really well and create a ton of fans that way.
The comparison of Oregon football to Cleveland is a solid one, and I like that very much. Look, it's an absurd claim. I don't know why the heart of rock and roll would possibly be in Cleveland. I can't even think of any bands that came out of Cleveland. If it's just because a DJ was playing some music, it doesn't make sense. Look, Detroit has an argument. Motown, right? Tupelo, Mississippi, where, or even, I suppose, Memphis, because of the Elvis connection. Liverpool, because of the Beatles. All of these have an argument. Cleveland has no argument. It's ridiculous. The score stays 3-2 because everybody got that one right. And if someone got that wrong, you would have lost 6 points. Eric McKinney, best sports movie of your lifetime?
So I got a real answer in terms of real sport and then a fake answer in terms of a fake sport. The fake answer for the fake sport is dodgeball. I know we want to call dodgeball a real sport, but the real
It was in
movie,
elementary school for me. It was, I mean, we played it.
Absolutely. The real movie, I'm going to go with Miracle. Love it.
Miracle. Good choice. Okay. Mark Holkin, best sports movie of your lifetime?
Yeah, just give me the point. It's Major League. Just give me the point, Chris.
I am going to give you the point. It is Major League, and we're tied at 3. I also would have accepted Hoosiers, but the answer is Major League, which was fantastic. Number 9. McKinney, start us off. Who will have more receiving yards in 2024, Jacoby Lane or Zachariah Branch?
So I was supposed to go second on this one because I went first on the last one. And honestly,
again, a complaint about the rule.
It's not a complaint. I'm explaining my pick here. I was going to take whoever Mark didn't take and then make a better argument.
Okay, Mark, go ahead and go.
For taking that guy.
Yeah, that's fine. Mark, go ahead and go.
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to take the answer that maybe Eric probably wasn't going to take. I'm going to take Jacoby Lane.
Jacoby Lane?
He's going to be USC's leading wide receiver.
Okay, McKinney, I guess you're taking.
All right, that's obviously a ridiculous answer, and I never would have picked Jacoby Lane in a million years. The answer is Zachariah Branch. The yards after catch, the safety blanket aspect of him there. I know you said more receiving yards. I'm going to juke the rules a little bit and put rushing yards into that too. Just touches, all-purpose yards. Chris, you're obviously fine with me doing that, so we'll move on from there. Look, if I'm being honest, I think Jacoby Lane's set up for a huge year. Ton of confidence. That guy can run. He can go up and get balls. I think he's going to have a big season.
Yeah, I mean, I think casual college football fans would be surprised by the question because they don't necessarily know who Jacoby Lane is, and everybody at this point knows who Zachariah Branch is. but Jacoby Lane is a stud. The crazy thing is that I wasn't sure whether these were the two I should pick. I mean, you could make an argument that Deuce Robinson may. I mean, with his length and his speed, you could see him also having just a monster season. So I think the answer is Zachariah Branch. Although if you ask me for who would have the most touchdowns, I may go with Jacoby Lane. I'm going to give the point to Mark Culkin, and I'm going to give the point to Mark Culkin because Eric McKinney first complained about the rules and then went outside the question knowingly because he admitted it. So the score now is Mark Culkin 4, Eric McKinney 3.
I do want to say at the risk of jumping out of the game, it is an important question, right? We talked about the wide receiver position going into last year, and it was like, oh, any one of 6 guys could be the leading receiver, and there doesn't need to be a number 1 guy. And we kind of saw how that worked out. Like a couple of these guys need to separate, and somebody needs to become that big time guy.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll be surprised if any of these guys separate so much from the group that they become the consistent go-to guy. But you can imagine in different roles where you have the 2 big body guys who you're looking for on 3rd and 9, and then Zach Branch is going to stretch the field and he's going to run reverses and screens and all kinds of things just to get him loose. But it's pretty exciting. It's a great group. Mark, you were going to say something?
Like I said at the beginning of the show, this 2023 recruiting class of wide receivers, it might go down as the best ever. You look at that 2019 USC wide receiver room. Wow. I mean, this has the potential to surpass that room that had Amon-Ra and Drake London and Tyler Vaughn, which is a really good room.
Yeah, no question. And we haven't talked about Mekhi Lemon, but Mekhi Lemon can really play. And we'll see what Mekhi does. I know his buddy left, but Mekhi is going to be in a wide receiver in an offense that throws the ball a lot and will throw it effectively, and does not have an established number 1, and he's going to be on the field a ton. So I'd be surprised if he went anywhere, but that's not my call. It's his. All right. The score is 4-3. Culkin is leading, which people are going to complain about, Mark. I'm going to be honest with you. People are going to complain to me about that.
I enjoy being the foil to everybody.
Okay.
Bring it on.
Well, good. You're like you're the heel from wrestling. You're the one that everybody wants to throw stuff at. Okay. Favorite USC player off the field during your lifetime? Last time McKinney didn't want to go first, so I changed the rules for him. This time he is going first, even if he doesn't want to. Go, Eric.
It's Troy Polamalu. The difference between how he is on the field and how he is off the field, just kind-hearted, soft-spoken, makes time for everybody. Love the commercials that he's in, became kind of a face of the NFL for a long time. Max Brown is sneaking up there with what he's doing off the field right now. I think he's got a real future there, but Troy Polamalu for me is my favorite player off the field.
Good answer, Mark. Can you beat that one?
Yeah, I think I can.
Okay.
Just popped in my head, but I got to go with the guy who just doesn't give 2 rips about what anybody thinks, has 0 filter when he speaks, and he was a pretty good running back at USC. Wendell White. That dude off the field, I want to sit down and have dinner and a few drinks with him and just see where the night goes, because I have a feeling I'm going to hear some really fun stories.
So Lindell is fantastic, and yes, I would love to have him as a panelist on this show some week. It would be amazing. I don't think he's going to do that, but I'd love it. But it's hard to beat Troy Polamalu here. Legendary player who, if you talk to him off the field, you would assume he's an artist or a musician or something. He's soft-spoken. He's gentle and just a beast. I also would have accepted Rodney Peete on this. I loved Rodney Peete, loved the guy, fantastic player, but he also off the field handled the pressure that he bore, especially that '88 season, with just a ton of grace. Great dude, great quarterback. Eric McKinney wins that one, so that means it's a 4-4 tie. How do you guys suggest we break this tie? Anybody have an idea?
Can we kick it to the NCAA? Get a decision back from them?
Okay, good answer. McKinney won. Congratulations, Eric. You were the first one to offer a proposal, even though it was ridiculous. And just by participating, you're the
No,
winner.
the viewer who wrote in that you're too mean,
Yeah.
he was right. He was right.
Okay,
That puts me ahead for next week, I think.
Yeah. Eric is starting up 5-0 next week. And by the way, viewer, if you say another comment like that, it's going to be he starts 10-0 next week. So that's just the way it is. Your comments are not rewarded; they're punished. Okay, overtime. This is it. Nick Saban gave an interview last week where he talked about his reasons for retiring. He mentioned things like NIL and the changes in the transfer portal and the like. What do you guys think of what Nick Saban had to say? Mark Holkin, start us off.
Yeah, you know what? He's been, before NIL came around, he was the king of NIL. I mean, they had a system in place that worked. And it's now at the point where everybody gets to use that same system, and it's above table. And he's 72 years old. And I don't think Nick Saban comes from a generation where he wants to be told by someone who's 16 or 17 years old, I need this much money if you want me to come play for you. Nick Saban's looking down at his hand going, you know what, I got too many rings on my fingers, young man. Don't tell me how to play this game. And he sees where it's going, and he just doesn't want any part of it. His reasons are very valid, and I think he can't accomplish anything more. And I just don't think he wants to be a part of this, the way college football is going. You know, it's one thing to allow the players to make money. Everybody, I'm for it. But I think right now the tail's wagging the dog, and Nick Saban still wants to be, he doesn't want to be the tail. He doesn't want to be the tail.
Eric McKinney, what do you think?
You guys, can you hear I put it near the mic? No, look, he can't, if he's not comfortable with how college football is going right now, then he can go, that's fine. But the idea that like he did it clean and didn't have to do any of this stuff to win all these games is ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's more challenging to coach now with everything that's going on. And he doesn't want to say, I don't have the speed for it. I can't keep up with all this stuff. So it's going to be, the attitude of the players and whatever. Yes, there's a ton of new things that are in college football right now. If you work your program to it and are set up, you can handle it. Everyone's going to have to deal with this. And the coaches that can deal with it the best, how it's set up now, are going to continue to win. And so the fact that you can look at where the 5-star guys are going now, they're spread everywhere because people don't have a collection of money that can pay for the top guys anymore because they can go get it anywhere. So you've got whatever, there's 55 stars and they're going to 47 different schools or 45 different schools. In the past, they went to 6 schools and Alabama got most of them. And so the fact that that's not happening anymore and he's got a problem with it, I'm sorry, man. Everybody dealt with Alabama pulling guys in with Dodge Chargers and whatever it was for years and years and years, where the NCAA just didn't care about it or didn't do anything about it. There was enough kind of stuff there in the SEC to say, don't look this way, don't look this way. And he was able to get away with a lot when he shouldn't have been able to get away with it. And now that it's become challenging, he's out. Again, they are going to have to figure out how to turn NIL, and I think we know that it's going towards employment. So figuring out how to get that into where, maybe they do have contracts where you go somewhere for 2 years or you go somewhere for 3 years or you have to pay a buyout like coaches do, but you're never going to get to a point where you can lock everybody in and say every single person on this team is coming back next year, because coaches can jump and go. Again, there's the buyout. There's something where you figure it out contractually. And I think players will get to that point. And so there is kind of some chaos right now. But the idea of, woe is me, I can't deal with this. The players are out of control and they want this and that. It's give me a break with that.
look, I'm just saying he's 70-something years old. And
Right.
when you're in the NFL, the team is interviewing the players that they're going to draft. It's the complete opposite in college. And I just don't think Nick Saban wants to have 16-year-olds interviewing him saying, why should I play for you, coach? I mean,
So say that, right? Say that. Hey, the game's totally changed.
Eric,
I'm not able to keep up with that stuff. I don't want to deal with that stuff, so I'm out.
I think we agree that's why he's out, but you can't say it. Should he say it? Absolutely.
In some ways, I'm sympathetic with Nick Saban here in that the problems that he wants to talk about are problems that a lot of people have with college football, which is, as Eric mentioned, in chaos at the moment. And Saban realizes that he has probably the loudest megaphone of anybody in college football because of what he's accomplished and the fact that he just retired. The problem is, and I can't hear him talk about these things without picturing an unhinged Jimbo Fisher screaming about how, you want to see how the king did it, and implying that Jimbo Fisher knows all kinds of things that were going on in Nick Saban's program, and that it's outrageous for Nick Saban now to talk about buying players. And while I don't think that Jimbo Fisher was a particularly effective head coach, I suspect he was telling the truth about that. And so it's kind of difficult now to separate Nick Saban, college football immortal, who's now disinterested in the process, from Nick Saban, who managed to dominate a college football landscape that we all know had a very active black market, particularly in the SEC. And look, here's the thing. Nick could have started talking about this sort of thing a long time ago. We bang on the NCAA, and rightly so, because the NCAA is, if not run by idiots, they certainly put on the appearance that it's run by idiots. And the NCAA has engaged in all kinds of nonsense over the years. But the NCAA is hired by the institutions, and the institutions knew what they wanted. They wanted to keep all the money, and they wanted to keep all the money for years. And Nick Saban was in a position where he could have pointed out a long time ago, when the O'Bannons were suing the NCAA, when that decision first came down, long before there was chaos, Nick Saban could have spoken out and said, guys, the reason there is a black market, the reason that players are getting paid unfairly, is because the players are helping to generate hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, and we don't give them a penny of it. And we pretend that what they're getting is education, but we all know that most of us are bringing kids into these schools that are not prepared to be students in the classrooms they're sitting in. And so we shuffle them through with the easiest classes we can find, and then we graduate about half of them, right? That was the situation for a long time, and Nick didn't want to say anything then. So I appreciate that Nick Saban now, because of the platform he has, wants to try to talk about these issues, and I get it. And he's not wrong that some of these problems need to be solved. But it just feels too late to me for Nick Saban now to be talking about what would make college football fair and righteous and put it on a sound footing, when he was content to play the game for a very long time, when it was clear that the wheels were going to fall off. And everybody decided to wait because they want to hold on to every penny they could for as many years as they could, including Nick. I've seen your house on the internet, Nick. Okay. Any other thoughts, guys, before we close this out?
That last thing from you felt more threatening than I think you wanted it to sound.
Yeah, I'm not going. Look, I'm not going to Nick's house. I'm not bringing Mark Culkin in his matches. We're not doing anything like that. I am a law-abiding citizen. I was just pointing out that I saw where Nick Saban lived, and he was content to take his piece of that pot. Okay, that's it. You're right, Eric. I shouldn't threaten Nick Saban. Okay, that'll do it for this edition of Inside the Trojans Huddle. A big thank you to Eric McKinney, Mark Culkin. A special thank you to all of you who put up with this nonsense every single week. We hope that you continue doing it. We'll see you again next week. Until then, fight on, everybody.